When we look back at the best draft classes of the 2000s, many of which are still shaping the NBA today, the ones we usually talk about are, 2003, 2008, 2009, sometimes 2006 or 2005. Many of those classes had multiple stars, multiple perennial all-stars, recognizable names who've carried their respective teams for such a long time. However, the 2004 draft class was different. Coming right after the dominant 03 class, 04 had a tremendous amount of hype as well, but it ended up being nowhere near as prominent. With the exception of Dwight Howard, who went number 1 overall, do you guys remember anybody else from that class? Well, today I'm going to talk about the 2004 NBA draft class, the forgotten year. Which players made their marks, which players never lived up to their expectations and have long been forgotten. In this video, I'm gonna go over everything. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and let's get started. But before we start, I'd like to give a big shout out to The Athletic for sponsoring this video. The Athletic is the best place to read about basketball, everything from detailed analysis to player rankings to team or player breakdowns. It features a world-class team of talented basketball writers, great storytelling to go along with their articles. And if you sign up, it's completely ad-free with no annoying pop-ups. Personally, my favorite writers on there are John Hollinger and Tim Cato. Go to theathletic.com/AndyHoops for a 7-day free trial and 50% off your subscription. Now, first things first, everybody knows, or everyone should know, who the number 1 pick was. Dwight was considered the strongest candidate to go number 1 in this draft class, although some would argue that he was not a consensus number 1 pick. Back then, there were some other options that teams definitely considered, one of which was Emeka Okafor. Some analysts and writers had him going ahead of Dwight Howard due to his incredible college career at UConn, while Dwight was coming straight out of high school. Okafor was even part of the infamous 2004 Olympic team, which faltered and won the bronze medal, but nonetheless, it was impressive that he even made the team, before his NBA career even started. But at the end of the day, Okafor would go number 2 to the Charlotte Bobcats. And after both of their rookie seasons, Okafor actually outperformed Dwight and he won the Rookie of the Year. For a short period of time, the rivalry between Okafor and Howard was a pretty big story. Did the Bobcats make the right choice in taking the experienced 3-year college pro? Or did the Magic make the right choice in taking Dwight Howard, the high school sensation? The Magic indeed made the right choice. That Rookie of the Year award would be the first and last award that Okafor would win for his entire career. He suffered an ankle injury in his sophomore year and remained a double-double machine afterwards, but he never made that jump, that leap into superstardom like Dwight. Instead, Okafor played a similar role for the rest of his career. A solid starting center who was a pretty good defender, a pretty good rebounder, decent at finishing the pick and roll, and had a decent post-up game and jump shot. There was nothing really special about his game, and he was always relegated as the 3rd or 4th option on every team he's been on. By 2013, Okafor's health was declining, and a herniated disc in his neck stopped him from playing for the next 4 years, until 2017, when he finally got medically cleared to play. He would spend a short stint back in New Orleans, then got waived. Afterwards, his career was pretty much over. On the other hand, Dwight became an 8-time All-Star, 8-time All-NBA, 5-time All-Defender, and a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. While his career has seen its fair share of ups and downs and controversies with injuries and the unwillingness to adapt his game, combined with a lot of critics, a lot of fans who lost faith in him, he never lost faith in himself, and he has successfully bounced back multiple times throughout his career. He is, by far, the best player out of this entire draft class. It's not even close. But let's take a look at some other players. We'll first start with the stars, players who've made an all-star team before but have largely been forgotten. Devin Harris, the 5th overall pick. Early in his career, he was a huge part of the Dallas Mavericks, who were contending for the championship. But eventually, the Mavs were tired of waiting for him to develop, so he was part of a trade that sent him to New Jersey, in exchange for Jason Kidd. In Jersey, Harris would become the main man on the team, the primary scoring option. In 2009, he averaged over 21 points a game and made the All-Star team for the first and only time of his career. However, he could not sustain this level of play. Over the years, he suffered numerous injuries, got traded multiple times, returned to Dallas multiple times, but mainly as a role player. The foot injuries plagued his entire career. And that was a huge reason why he never broke out into a true superstar, even though he might have had the talent to do so. Talent-wise, he certainly had a ton of skill, a great ball handler with good court vision, very quick at attacking the rim, but with an erratic jump shot as well. I think without the injuries, he could have developed into a similar player like Tony Parker. Luol Deng, the 7th overall pick. In America, Deng was relatively unknown before making his appearance at Duke University, but he would make his mark very quickly, leading all college freshmen in scoring and rebounding. Initially, Deng got drafted by the Phoenix Suns, however, he was just one of many picks that Suns owner Robert Sarver did not care about. During the mid-2000s, while the Suns were contending, Sarver made many trades that included selling off draft picks for money. Deng was one of those picks, and one of the worst draft day trades in NBA history, cause the Suns essentially got nothing back. So anyway, Deng would be sent to Chicago, where he'd spend most of his career. As the ultimate glue guy and complementary piece alongside Derrick Rose, Deng would eventually become a two-time All-Star, and one of the grittiest defenders in the league. Unfortunately, there was an incident in the hospital where he was diagnosed with meningitis and got a faulty procedure that led to a spinal fluid leak. Deng's body suffered, and at one point, his life was seriously at risk. This was around the 2013 playoffs. Afterwards, he got traded, and his career regressed, and he never returned back to form. Andre Iguodala, the 9th overall pick. Everyone knows Iggy. Before he joined the Warriors, he was leading his own team, although not very successfully. Iggy was an all-star and a great all-around player. Playing alongside Allen Iverson, Iggy has stated that he learned the ropes of the game and developed as a secondary player. He learned a lot from Iverson. Overall, he's been a great teammate and well-respected among NBA circles. Although, there was that time when he was playing for the Nuggets and apparently leaked out information to head coach Mark Jackson, who at the time was the Warriors' head coach. They were playing against each other in the 2013 playoffs. That kinda left a bad taste with the Nuggets, and surprise surprise, Iggy would join the Warriors in that same offseason. It was kinda seen as a betrayal. Now, he has not yet retired, but he still had a fantastic career, even winning Finals MVP while being mostly a bench player that year. At the 15th pick, the Boston Celtics drafted Al Jefferson, another high school player. Now, I said I'd cover the All-Stars first, and surprisingly, Al Jefferson never made an All-Star team, but he did make an All-NBA team in 2014. With 3 seasons of averaging over 20 and 10, it's quite surprising he did not make any All-Star team. But when you look at the teams he's been on, yeah, besides a few exceptions, his teams never won that many games. From Minnesota to Utah to Charlotte, he's never gotten out of the first round, despite some excellent individual play. One of the most underrated post-up scorers ever, Jefferson had all the fundamentals and a soft touch around the rim. Unfortunately, his post-game was the only thing special about him, as he was never a good defender, a good passer, or anywhere near a complete player. By the end of his career, he kinda just faded out of the spotlight, but he was still doing his thing. Now, the last All-Star of this class. Can you guess who it is? If you guessed Jameer Nelson, you were correct, but how many people actually guessed that? Honestly, I knew Jameer Nelson was an All-Star at some point when playing in Orlando, but I didn't realize he was part of the same draft class as Dwight Howard. That's pretty cool. Nelson was still pretty damn good in his lone All-Star season, as he averaged over 16 points with incredible shooting splits. Obviously, he benefited a lot from playing alongside Howard, as did many other players in Orlando. After leaving Orlando, Nelson's game got exposed, and he was never an All-Star again. It's kinda similar to how Mo Williams made an All-Star team that one year. When he played with LeBron, his game elevated, but without LeBron, he was a non-factor. Well, besides that one game where he scored 50 points, I mean. Jameer was similar to Mo Williams in that he was kinda irrelevant after he stopped playing with Dwight, but a solid point guard nonetheless. Believe it or not, those were all the All-Stars. There were only 5 All-Stars in this entire draft class. A very, very low number. However, there were many other well-known players who also got drafted this year, some of whom were borderline All-Stars during their primes. This includes guys like Ben Gordon, the 3rd overall pick, a 20 points per game scorer back in the day. Part of the Luol Deng and Derrick Rose era Chicago Bulls, and he had one of the most memorable playoff series of all time in 2009 against the Boston Celtics. Also, the only player to win 6th Man of the Year as a rookie. There's also Shaun Livingston at number 4 and Josh Childress at number 6. Both were super hyped up prospects who were expected to become stars, but for one reason or another, they never made that jump. For Livingston, it was a brutal knee injury. For Childress, he was doing well, but then he left the NBA in the middle of his prime to play in Greece, where he was offered more money. At number 13, Sebastian Telfair, one of the greatest high school players of all time, but unfortunately, his NBA career was very underwhelming. Then there's Josh Smith at number 17. His reputation later in his career was mainly just being an inefficient chucker, but back in his early days, he was looking like a rising star. A fantastic all-around, hyper-athletic forward who stuffed the stat sheet and could literally do it all. Some even called him LeBron Light. Right after him in the draft was J.R. Smith, who everyone should know. There was also a point where everyone recognized how talented J.R. Smith was, but he could never put it all together or maintain a high level of consistency. Also, some other former Cavs players were drafted this year too, like Delonte West and Anderson Varejao. Tony Allen at number 25 and Kevin Martin at 26. Funny enough, they were completely opposite players, with Martin being a dynamic scorer, and Allen being obviously an incredible defender. Back-to-back solid picks, especially in the later part of the first round. At number 27 and 28, we got back-to-back Slovenian players, Sasha Vujacic and Beno Udrih. Trevor Ariza got drafted at number 43, one of the greatest role players of all time and probably the best second-round pick this year. At number 46, we saw Ha Seung-jin, the first and only player to ever be drafted out of South Korea. At number 50, we saw the Greek legend Vasilis Spanoulis get drafted to the NBA. His NBA career didn't last very long, but he's still one of the greatest EuroLeague players in history. And finally, last but not least, drafted at number 14, Mr. Kardashian. Anyway, that's all folks, that sums up the 2004 NBA draft class. One of the more forgotten drafts because other than Dwight Howard, there weren't many notable names. There were some other All-Stars like I mentioned, but Dwight was the only guy who turned into a true superstar. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on this draft class. Thank you everyone so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.